we all have our talents and our contributions that we want to make. We invest in ourselves. We try to get better at what we do. And finding that moment where you can transfer your talents into the benefit of a company, I get it. It's revenue. And then the bottom line grows. And they're all good things to the spreadsheet folks. But at the end of the day, you want to find yourself, not lose yourself through the journey. And that's the most important part. And you can do that and grow.
Hey, welcome back to The Rising Tide. I am so excited to spend some time today with my friend and colleague in this industry, Ali McCarthy, and just getting to understand a little bit of what she's doing today, but also looking back on some of the interesting things we've been able to work on together in the industry, but more so the career that she's built, helping transform asset management and wealth management firms across this industry. So Allie, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me here.
Allie, tell me a little bit about what you're doing these days. What do you have going on in the industry?
So about a year ago, I started Amplify Your Voice, and it is fractional CMO services for the financial services and fintech industry. So like you said, I've been around for a minute or two. It's a great opportunity to be able to engage with companies now where they're at a different place and where I can bring some of the experiences that I have to them to help them grow. I was kind of hesitant, if you will, to go on my own and not have a full-time employer. But then I found that I really, really love the work I'm doing. And instead of having, one boss, I'll have 5 at a time. So it's great.
I think it's fun to have multiple clients in my experience, because you have this nice volley effect that happens where you actually see something that really augments another relationship and saying, hey, this is working over here. What if it worked here? And as long as no one's fighting against each other for market, it becomes really complementary and helps you have a more powerful value add, in my experience.
It does. And what it has really shown me is that the growth that you get from being around all the different companies and where they're at, you grow as an individual as well. It's almost like when they say, when you give of your time and you're volunteering, you fill up somewhere on the inside. It's an odd parallel, but I feel that way with my clients too. As I'm working with different companies, my knowledge is gaining and my experience to be able to help them and get them to where they are faster than I think if I was at any one of those individual companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's mid-2024 already when we're recording this. It's just an interesting time in the industry. I was asking a friend the other day, and I asked him the question, who's really growing well right now? Like, who's out there just grabbing market share? And he's like, I don't really know. I don't really have somebody that's becoming a massive brand all of a sudden. I think we have a few Altruist and others that have done a massive job of building brand and growing investment and growing market share. But I'm curious who you feel like is really starting to become more of a staple in the industry, and maybe even what you're seeing is helping lift brands today to grow and become more known in the current era.
I think the brands that are really feeling the most growth, at least experiencing the growth at a faster rate, are the ones that are embracing exactly the topic that you wanted to talk about today, leadership, and are really doubling down on the talent that they have. Because at the end of the day, we know technology will drive efficiency in our job, and it's a great thing. But if you can really get that talented, cohesive team together, you can move markets in your industry. Because what I've found is a lot of times companies are their own worst enemy, meaning they have dissension amongst their leadership team, or they can't get processes or workflows or teams to work well together. And it's like the enemy isn't within. The air quote enemy might be your competition, or might be a threatening regulation or something that, the headwinds that we face shouldn't be ones, in my opinion, that are preventable, right? I mean, you can work on being a great team. You can work at being a great leader. Those are fixable problems, if you will. And you can also develop the processes and the workflows internally to do those things. So I've found the teams that are cohesive, that is on the inside, and what you're seeing on the outside is the benefit of all of that work that they're doing.
And it's hard because you can grab people, you can assemble the Avengers or whatever of your of your sector, and it doesn't always pan out. And I think the interesting thing is just how much iteration it actually takes to figure it all out, and balancing, like, really realizing, like, okay, 3 years ago you were really good at this, or this was working. This isn't working. How do we shift? How do we flex? How do we keep trying new things to really mold into the figure that's actually going to have that success?
And I think great leaders have that resilience, right? You have almost a little bit of the humility in that you don't know everything. You know that you don't know every next move. So you're curious and you want to constantly learn more. You might be considered a lifelong learner, but also that you stay humble to the fact that you might have to adapt and flex as things are starting to change. So you're right. You could have, and even the Avengers had dissension. I mean, we've seen the movies, right? It wasn't all there. There's some good epic battles between the teams, and it's just something that you have to really, you have to want to be there, and you have to want to grow together. There's that certain vulnerability that comes with strength. And that's where I think the teams that are starting to emerge, you start to see it in all the chatter about different RIA teams and how they're coming together, because I think they naturally have this independence of thought and that they all want to be at it together. There's this bootstrap mentality when they begin, but then they start to realize that they need additional talent when they're going to grow and scale. And they start to bring folks into an environment, and they appreciate the collective wisdom of the team that way.
Yeah. And I think the other part of that story is what will happen in the future. We have all the consolidation that will actually lead to multiplication. Like, ultimately those teams will outgrow those platforms and need this new stuff. But along the way, there's this really awesome opportunity for refinement and understanding, like, okay, what can we work on together? How can we make a dent together and build processes and a platform, together? It's a pretty fun thing to experience, but I don't think necessarily people think about it with a lot of they're not like attacking the idea like in a like proactive way. It's just a lot of it's just happening to them. But I think we've probably seen a lot to see where the story goes.
Well, and when you think about, depending on how you're structured, so if there's this pressure to perform, to hit certain numbers, it can take time for you to really say, okay, how are we going to get there in a healthy way? Because growth can happen, and you can hit your numbers, but you might lose your soul doing it, and you might burn out, and the joy might leave the building, so to speak. And you've got a family, you've got to take care of your own well-being and all those things. So you have to find a way to say, okay, is there a way that we can grow and scale this company and still, keep our wits about ourselves, so to speak, and not lose the joy of the work that we once, got into the business to do. And I think there's a moment where if there's one thing, there's a better appreciation for that today. I think if COVID gave us one gift, it gave us that pause to say, I matter, my well-being matters, and I'm going to take more accountability and authority for what I choose to do professionally moving forward. And the things that you thought you had to do, you were emancipated from, right? It used to be, oh, I'm a I'm a platinum member. I have X amount of miles. And I've been, which just means I've been away from my family X amount of weeks out of the year is what that means. And, we don't have to do that anymore. We can say, I can work equally as hard, but in a way that is providing that balance that people need today to be great stewards, right? I mean, you want to be the best parent, employee, friend that you can be. So, you need to have sort of that reset every once in a while in your career.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot of I was talking to another company this morning and they said, hey, we're going all back into the office. Like that's, what we're doing. And I think that's going to be a trend. But it's interesting. I think that causes a lot of prompts for a lot of people that have worked now for 4 years remotely and have gotten quite comfortable with it. And for companies that have started to hire people that live in all sorts of states that have to figure out how they're going to work. Are we just going to create unique exceptions for the person in Oregon that we hired? It's our only person, but how are we going to expect them to go to our San Francisco office? Or what is that? How are we going to create rules around all these things? It's an interesting time, and a lot of people have these existential questions now about whether or not they should even stay in that job or look at all kinds of different things. But anyway, all the HR stuff aside, let's talk about growing a business in this post-COVID era, because it is a different time. It's a different way that companies have to figure things out. And I imagine that, when people engage you, Allie, there's probably some key questions about what's most important, where can we start to have success? And just because you're a student of this, I'm curious on your perspective. If I have a B2B company, maybe an asset management company, which you have a lot of experience with, or a wealth tech company, what are you seeing as the most opportune way for these companies to really start to get early wins, start to build momentum, and then ultimately start to translate that into new revenue?
Sure. I think it does begin with really listening to what you're trying to solve by the people you want to attract, right? If you're a wealth tech or if you're an asset manager, what is the problem that you are really trying to solve for the client, whomever that might be? Because I think a lot of times we do the opposite. We say, here's this product, go find the person, versus adapting what we're doing to actually the people that will buy and spend money on what you're producing, whatever that might be. So I think sometimes the companies that win, or the companies that really want to grow faster, will take a step back and say, okay, how are we going to deliver this? What does the journey look like? What is the value we bring? And then you can start to piece together a marketing and go-to-market strategy that aligns with who the people you are that you want to attract. Because if I'm a busy RIA who has complete autonomy in the decisions on what type of technology I bring in, it's a different buying experience than if I'm an enterprise shop and I'm the head of technology and I'm bringing that same technology stack in. And I think sometimes we look at that through the same lens and from a marketing perspective, and we're not really honoring that what the handshake that it takes for one is not the same handshake for the other. And you really have to solve the problem differently. And that is something that a lot of the firms in our industry haven't grown up doing because it's new, it's different. We're more B2B to C than we've ever been in the financial services industry, at least on the asset management side. Everything was B2B. You needed a broker-dealer engagement. You needed to have a selling agreement. You needed to go through a wholesaler. I mean, there were all these layers before you ever even talk to a client. And now the consumer is completely informed and they can absolutely get to your solution should they want to. And marketing is the driver of that. Under other industries have lapped us on that engagement model. And I feel like our industry is catching up to that type of engagement where I'm actually going to allow marketing to lead and tell the story that of the clients that want to buy from us. And I think that that is something that we haven't spent enough time looking at. My 25 years in the industry, it was very different when I got in. And it was like I had to adjust myself and my skills and my lens on the world to say, hey, you know what, we can contribute to this conversation. Let's get after it.
I remember when compliance was taking like a week or 2 weeks to review basic things. It was just not ready for you to really market. And this expectation that, we'd write, and it's actually probably a good way to learn because you're writing everything at one time. Like I'm writing a whole campaign, all my social, all my landing pages, all my emails, all of it in one place. You start to think about it comprehensively. It's great. I mean, it's the same working with an agency or just general creative, writing this and then getting pushback from compliance. There's too much gray in it. That process, you just had to be so patient, but also persistent. It just created this constant tension to get success. And I think a lot of stuff is starting to really improve. I think there's more of a spirit of like, hey, we got to move. Like we understand that content is driving the future of marketing here, and we can't be just holding content hostage.
Well, and you also don't know what content's going to convert. I mean, if you're not listening, right, you don't know that what you wrote works, and then you have to adjust it on Tuesday and then run it, and then adjust it on Thursday and run it, and then adjust it again on the next Monday. And you have to stay completely engaged, listening to what is actually going to convert or have someone get through the clutter of all the different opportunities to engage with the end client or whoever your consumer is. And it's a very tough, fragmented network of different solutions you can use. I mean, you can use TikTok, you can use Instagram, you can use LinkedIn. I mean, we have every channel available to us to talk to people. We haven't even scratched the surface in our industry. But you can't be afraid. That's the other thing. And, thinking that we have all the answers, we don't. We don't know what's going to entice someone to buy our products. You have to really stay present with what they're interested in, how they're buying, how they're finding information, and what is changing in their life. And I think that that's what marketers are, naturally curious people, and it aligns with the job, right? A salesperson is, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to keep telling you the same thing, and eventually I will convert you. And a marketer will take a pause, listen, see what's happening, and really adjust. And I think you need both of those, but we have to embrace that role as storytellers, but really as active listeners, more importantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I completely agree. How are you seeing people really get story out today? Like, what does that look like in a highly regulated industry for the idea of story to really start to take flight?
Well, what I learned, and going back to your illustration of compliance, I've learned that, those weren't the best stories to tell anyway, right? Who wanted to talk about all the legalese? But what you could talk about was the outcome, right? The outcome-driven communication model. Where was the destination going? And I think that when you're telling the story of whatever the product is, if it's an annuity or a fintech solution or an RIA and the service model that they offer, it's where do they want to be? Where does the client, where does the consumer want to be? What is the end goal? And I think that when I actually went toward outcome-oriented communications, I think that was liberated from the perils of compliance, so to speak, because it was just telling the stories of how they came to it. Where were they in their journey? What was the issue? Was it that they were having a swivel chair experience and advisors couldn't get to their technology fast enough? Or, is an annuity, is just really assurance and peace of mind. And you can talk about the stories of someone's life and where the money's going to be used. And I think that unlocked this human element to things that were intangible, right? The things we sell typically are intangible. An ETF isn't an actual widget. So, it's like, well, what is it going to do for us? Where is it going to help us retire with dignity and have good skills that you're going to teach your family about investing? And so some of these things you have to story sell because they're ethereal anyway. And you want to be able to bring some relevance to it. And so that is where I think the firms that can take what you do and explain it in a way that all of their, employees can repeat and their clients need it, and you can pass those stories through the advisor to the end client. And that's where it's just easier. It's harder to get there, but once you get there, it's much easier to have pass-through content that can go through all the channels and layers that we have.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Allie, when you and I first met, outcomes is the word I circled because you are running this thing called the Center for Outcomes,
Correct.
right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And there's this whole community that you'd built to help drive education and adoption for, I think, one of the largest independent asset managers that was out there at the time. Now, a lot of those companies have been consolidated through all these acquisitions and things like that. But I thought it was really remarkable how you were able to build and design a community, but the narrative-driven community that was not just like a LMS sort of or learning management sort of experience, but it was also like, I think you did road shows and you did a lot of different educational things. Dr. Daniel Crosby also worked as part of your staff there to help really augment that from a behavioral finance standpoint. I'm curious on that because I think that was, today it feels like it's easier to make content. It might be easier to make low quality content, but like to make really rich content that's challenging and also like provides that continuing ed credit. I mean, there's a degree of professionalism that has to happen. I'm curious on what your experience was building the Center for Outcomes and how that actually did measurably transform the business, having that sort of endeavor as a fixture inside that company.
I do believe that when you are a product manufacturer, like an asset management firm, you're a commodity of sorts, right? You might have really intelligent people and you are certainly doing good for every investor, but you have to find a way to put context around the work that you're doing. And that is where the Center for Outcomes was born, because it was about the strength of the relationship between the advisor and the client. And at the end of the day, that's a bond that is very crucial to the success of retirees retiring with dignity. Because if they didn't have a sage to guide them along the way, they might make emotional decisions. And so we knew this. And so we wanted to find a platform to bring this to light, to be able to then help folks have better conversations about money matters and what could work. And I think that built the foundation for me to be able to say, okay, this is replicable in any format or in any sort of sales and marketing conversation. It doesn't matter what it is. It just happened to be we were talking about investment products, right? But you could transfer that to any fintech experience and or any wealth management firm that's out there. We did a lot of studies at the Center for Outcomes, studying advisors and clients. I carried on some of the work and studied emotional intelligence levels of financial advisors and their clients. And so that was born out of the Center for Outcomes as well. And that's the doctorate work that I went through, just saying, okay, what makes this work? Like, why is this advisor successful, more successful than the other advisor? Why do their clients not leave them? And it just found that advisors that have higher levels of emotional intelligence have double the amount of referrals than lower EQ advisors. And intuitively, what does that mean? It means they listen. It means they can share stories. Again, going back to the great leaders, they empathize when you're stressed out. They understand that this isn't easy and there's no tangibility there. And so you have to make sure that you are providing the right advice and that you can, be there for the client at all the moments when they need them most. And that was a very joyous time. And I'm glad to be able to build on that now and be able to say, okay, these pillars are timeless and you should be thinking about them because they transfer not only in the advisor-client relationship, but they are completely transferable into management teams. And then again, elevate that to your marketing. What are you going out after, right? What are you saying? What are you putting out into the marketplace? And how can you pay that off?
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. And the thing that I've seen is that there's obviously this stigma on financial services. Financial services has a low trust level, right? I think it's only second to like used car salespeople. I am thankful because I've rarely experienced that in my career. I've generally experienced a lot of like people that really care, that going to spend the time, they're actually going to put in the work. They want to develop their EQ. And fundamentally, I ultimately have been able to experience that at the foundational levels, this industry is built on families, not just the families of end clients, where they're sitting down around the table, making sure that their questions that they're afraid to even ask one another are answered. And they have the confidence, they have that security and understanding that like, hey, we've done all right. We're going to have enough. Or we need to work a little bit longer, so we'll be okay. Like going through those conversations. It's so important that advisors are equipped and are empathetic and understand that if you can understand what the needs are of your clients before they even ask them, your value is captured even in that moment. And then the really cool thing is beyond that, the people that are serving those families are often families. It's often two partners, their children, all of this, coming together to build a business as a small entity that becomes bigger or transforms over time. And so to be able to produce something that materially guides and helps that is kind of like a really wonderful sacred thing because it cascades all the way down to the kitchen table where those people are asking those questions. So it all matters. It's not just marketing and sales. It's really transformational because it fundamentally helps people. And I think that's where we all got to get back to that in what we're doing, like digging down to finding, where's the heart of this? Like what insights are these actually unpacking so I help somebody live a better life? If we can focus on that, everything else is kind of solved because it's so easy to sell and market that because it's truly wonderful. And, I think that's part of the joy of what we get to do.
And there's authenticity there. People have good BS meters, so to speak, and you have to have that authenticity. And I think that kind of captures well what you were saying about, just families and serving each other and being able to do it in a way that's healthy and you can have a great life. Because at the end of the day, we all have our talents and our contributions that we want to make, and we invest in ourselves. We try to get better at what we do, and finding that moment where you can transfer your talents into the benefit of a company and the other talents and the team working together to serve a marketplace. I get it. It's revenue and and then the bottom line grows and they're all good things to the spreadsheet folks. But at the end of the day, you want to find yourself, not lose yourself through the journey. And that's the most important part is it's like, let's do this, let's work at that. And you can do that and grow. And I think that the next generation that's under us. So I'm, a Gen Xer. So I guess I'm stereotypically, always glass half empty or a little, skeptic, but I think that and believe that as we get through these next generations of the workforce, of 4 workforces right now in the industry, that's amazing, that we're going to see this more purpose-driven outlook. And I don't know if people will go to an office 5 days a week. I don't know if that's bringing their best self. I just think you really are going to have to look at where you want to go. Be a transparent leader. It's okay to tell the company that we need to work hard to get these goals, and then we'll all benefit from it in our bonus. I think every generation honors that hard work pays off, and you have to be present. So whether the person's in the office or not, that's the true testament of success, right? Is like, are we contributing? Are we able to give of our talents and be able to move the company forward to serve the client better?
Yeah. I do think that the future is going to be a lot more rapid iteration. I think there's an opportunity for us to see stuff a lot faster, but also try to, have that gut where we got to give it a little more time. We got to measure. We got to be patient, but we also have to be persistent. I think that's always going to be fundamentally kind of an art that maybe not everyone appreciates, but the people that are truly artistic in this space and understand that there's something, intangible to a degree with how we call these shots and try these initiatives. It's just it's a really nice time for those individuals to like really make a difference. But I think they're always a little lonely in that world. They're always kind of like going down this path, maybe sometimes with a low level of companionship, because it's like, there's not a lot of people here that are, thinking this way, because my board doesn't necessarily think this way. They want to see the numbers grow. I'm like, I get it, but I want to see the brand become more experiential. I want to see our clients, have this like natural resonance of positivity toward, the outcome we're providing, and all those sorts of things.
Well, I mean, I love growth too. I mean, again, I think that what's interesting is like the soft and the hard, right? It's like, if you're soft skills, you can't be numbers driven. And that's not true. It's like, just because I say the word outcomes, it doesn't mean I have no respect for revenue. And I think that people have been looking at it as an either or, right? And maybe it's an and maybe you can say, we can grow this thing and have the brand recognition that we want, and be able to wrap the client experience with something that's very sticky where they won't want to leave. And I believe I double down on that, because I love to see companies grow just as much as the CFO does. But our approaches are different, and our view through the world is different, and my contributions to that growth are different. And I think that marketers that are able to say, I too can see that, and I'm going to use our talents this way. The measurement's different, but the growth is palpable. I mean, if someone can recognize our brands in this industry and start to bubble up through all the noise, I mean, think of the Kitsis map. I mean, you've got to slug through a lot of competition to get your name out there. And it's something to be said about the firms that are able to say, we are resonating with our audiences. We are making a mark. We are connecting with them at a deeper level. We're meeting them where they are. We're listening, and we're delivering the solution in a manner in which they want. Those are the ones that are going to kind of go back to the first question. Those are the ones that everyone's going to remember and never forget.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, Allie, let's go through a couple things. I want to talk specifically here as we get toward the end to the people that are just getting started in financial services, and they've joined a new company in their first year marketer, or maybe they're, starting up, they're leaving a Y Combinator and moving into this industry, and they want to make a dent, but it's hard. What would you say to somebody getting started on how to make the most meaningful impact working to grow a wealth tech or asset management brand in 2024?
When you're starting in your career, you're very, very receptive to all the inputs that you have, right? You have a lot coming at you. Your confidence is lower naturally because you're younger. You don't have as many years in the workforce. You're not going to use your voice as much. So your assertive level is low. You're not talking up in meetings. And I think that as marketers start to grow brands and think about where they can contribute, one thing that you can do early in your career is you can go out and listen. You can actively listen to the clients that you are selling to today and the clients that you want to sell to tomorrow, by which, if you're a young person, you're probably the target, and you can start to really use that as your secret weapon, because once you start to use the voice of the client and be able to find ways to infuse that through the company, that's where you're going to be a valuable member of the team, right? You're not going to be at the boardroom yet, but that's your way to work your way through and to build the confidence that you have. So, because you're getting so many things put at you that you don't really ever feel like you're an expert on anything. It's like, well, you don't know how to do emails, and here's how you do a client meeting, and this is how you do, you put up a trade show booth, and these are how you run sales sequences, and, this is how you do an email campaign. Well, but yes, you need leaders to teach you those things, but then you need those amazing leaders to be able to show you the vision. And then you have to have that quiet moment where you have the voice of the consumer in your head. And then you can find all these beautiful cracks that you can open up and say, okay, well, what if we tried this? What if the journey went here? What if we did do TikTok? What if we did do this? And you could really start to feel confidence. And those little things as a young professional really boost your confidence in your ability to lead, because it is a space in which you are authentically giving of your talents. And I think that is the most joyous part of the journey, is that I don't ever have it figured out. I come in every project knowing that my last campaign is dead already. It's already, old news. I need to look at the next campaign with a fresh lens. And I think that that's what a young professional brings, is not years of bias and I've done it always, this is the way we do it, but this fresh lens. And I would say just always stay close to the customer, whoever that is. That is the breath of fresh air. It's the best part of the work you do. And it's the winner every time. And you start to become someone that, people will tap your shoulder. I know it. They will. And they'll say, we want you to work on this project. Come over here. We want you to do that, because they will see something in you. And I think that those are the marketers that will be leading our organizations. And I can't wait to support that today and, be like, hey, let's tap your shoulder. Come on over and help us crush it, because, we don't know what we don't know, but you might have some great ideas.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. And I totally agree. And you talked about curiosity earlier. It's so important to be curious and to set yourself aside, go immerse yourself in the language of the industry, go listen to all the podcasts. There's so much more content you can watch and listen to at 2x. Yeah. you can grow so fast, and understand, the terminology, just the various semantics that are all part of things. And as somebody that leads marketing, the two of us, for sure, and Adam, like when we see people that actually speak the language, it just is massively impactful, because now it's like, oh, I can throw that to you. You get it. You understand it. You understand how this customer makes money, so you can be empathetic, and you can understand that our campaign is going to cost them X dollars to buy, and then we're going to do this economy. You can actually participate in the discussion. And so this is great advice, Allie. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And how can people learn more about you and your services? And
Sure. So I'm doing two things. So I work on Amplify Your Voice as a fractional CMO for the wealth and fintech space. So that is currently my full-time profession. But like I said, I am extremely passionate about emotional intelligence, and that is the other part of me that has now been able to grow and doing coaching. So amplifyyourvoice.studio is a way that people can engage with me. And I just appreciate the ability to be here, Judd. You are an awesome friend, and it's great to see you constantly doing new things. You are a serial entrepreneur, always filled with great ideas, and I love that about you.
Thanks, Allie. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And that's it for this episode of The Rising Tide. Thank you so much to Ali McCarthy, Adam Clark, and everyone here that helped produce this show at Turncast. Please stay tuned for the next episode with another leader of, someone that's changing marketing and growing this and has a great level of experience that can help inspire and guide you in your marketing and growth journey.